Coming in at $120, we have Razer's ProClick V2 Vertical Edition. This is the first vertical mouse from Razer, even though it's called the V2. Well, it's called V2 because Razer has two other mice in the V1 series of ProClick. There's the ProClick Mini, which is my travel mouse. Nothing ergonomic about this whatsoever. But they did have an ergonomic mouse. It's more akin to the MX Master series that was also white and gray, really cool looking mouse. It was a lovely mouse that I used for a couple of years, but I got this from work at no cost to me, and it has this cool little button here that allows me to really be more productive in my Mac OS environment because I can expand all my windows and I can slide between desktops, which is really cool. So I don't have to go to the trackpad on my MacBook if I press and hold this button. Well, Razer has their own little special button here, and by default, this is the AI prompt button. I think it's called Prompt Master. We'll get to this a little bit later in the video, closer towards the end, because what I want to do is show you how this button can be mapped to different AI functions inside of Razer Synapse 4.0. Before we get to any of that, I want to make sure you get a good tour of this mouse, and I also want to talk about my experience using vertical and ergonomic mice, because that's going to have a lot of input into how I feel about this Razer mouse. So before we talk about the Razer mouse, let's just talk about ergonomic mice in general. I am by no means an expert in vertical mice or ergonomics whatsoever, but I have been using computer mice for 35 years or something, right? And during that time, I've tried basically everything. Trackball mice, hybrid mice, meaning it has a trackball on it, and of course, a bunch of vertical mice, and then some in-betweens. For a long time, I used this Elecom mouse because it solved some problems that I had. It wasn't as vertical as something like the Logitech vertical mouse or the V2 here. It had a lower angle, but not as low of an angle as the Logitech mouse. And it had a resting place for my thumb, but it doesn't really have much of a resting place for my pinky. So this sort of went through the paces, and then eventually I just moved on from it. Then you have this ProClick mouse, which is super affordable. I think it's 30 bucks, but it's extremely lightweight, which actually is not a plus based on how I work in my office setup, which I'll talk about later. And again, has nothing for your pinky, but it has a really good rest for your palm and for your thumb. So I liked it for that purpose, and otherwise it just didn't quite meet my needs. And as I mentioned before, this was pretty much a gift from work, and it's a great mouse, but it doesn't have really any kind of verticality to it whatsoever. And I do not have carpal tunnel, which I believe is the most common mouse-related injury. But what I do have is something similar. I have tennis elbow that flares up from time to time. And when it does flare up, I really cannot use a regular mouse. I have to go to a vertical mouse, or I gotta go left-handed, which I'm just terrible at, or I gotta really harp on the magic trackpad, which over time also presents some additional discomfort in my arm. Okay, so that's my experience with vertical mice, which I think is quite a lot. I've used the Logitech ones too, and I've got some videos on that on the channel. But let's talk about this mouse, because it's quite different from those mice in two key ways. Okay, so the first thing to notice is that the angle of this is very neutral for your arm. So watch as I acclimate my arm to the Logitech. You see how I twist like that? Well, this twist, based on my research, again, not an expert, never been to a mouse manufacturing facility or research facility, you're automatically gonna start twisting your tendons. This actually replicates a handshake. So if you think about one of the most natural movements that you have as a human in your day-to-day, right, is that you go to shake someone's hand. I would imagine that biologically we are not wired to intentionally cause any kind of discomfort, or it's a natural motion is what I'm trying to say, to go shake someone's hand. Like you just kind of go in, I'm sure with a small degree of variability, we all go in at the same angle for a handshake. And I come from a handshake heavy culture, so I've got to be good at shaking hands, comfortable. I've got a lot of reps when it comes to shaking hands. So I feel like the fact that that's part of the marketing and likely part of the design process by Razer is to keep this at an angle that's neutral and similar to a handshake. I believe that is a long-term a good thing for your physical health with your hand if you do want to main this mouse and really get good at it. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is there's a pinky rest. That's really important. But you'll notice there isn't this tail like we have on the ProClick, and I've seen way more exaggerated tails than that on mice. I've used mice with more exaggeration. because you don't actually need it because your palm is not going to be down low because of how high up the thumb rest is. So I believe of all the mice I've tested, this one is the most comfortable for me if I'm in a seated position. Okay, I said that intentionally that way because I also work standing up. Well, I'll elevate my desk, whereby my hands can be more up like this, in which case I go to more of a claw grip, which absolutely works, or I'll just switch to my trackpad. Because I have a laptop that I open up and then a big screen behind it, so I can easily get to my trackpad. For most people, and for half of my day, maybe a little more than half of my day, I'm seated, this is the most comfortable mouse that I've used. But it does take some getting used to. Okay, check this out. On this side, we have this very comfortable, grippy rubber texture. Listen to this. This is great. What I love about this is just how comfortable it is to rest on. And at the same time, I don't have to squeeze my hand in order to get a grip on it because of this grid-like design and the fact that it's rubber rather than a pure plastic like on this side. So that's very good. But you'll also notice that the forward and back buttons are vertically oriented rather than laterally oriented. So on every other mouse, and I'd have to pull up a picture of those Logitech vertical mice to get to verify it, but I think every other vertical mouse or ergonomic mouse, any mouse, your forward and back buttons are going to be this horizontal layout rather than a vertical layout. And this has taken me quite a bit of time to get used to. I'm reacclimating myself to using a vertical mouse, but I'm also now trying to remember that my forward and back buttons are up and down rather than left or right. So that takes a little getting used to, especially because you can really feel this button, as you're mousing around. So I've clicked it as forward and back like this, which doesn't work. It's one button, even though you can click it on both sides. So a little bit of muscle memory I've got to develop in order to get used to that button layout. On this side, these buttons are great. They're a little clicky though. Listen to this. And here's the mouse wheel. Whereas something like the Logitech is very quiet. Now on the Logitech mouse, instead of having this resistance, you can make it a free motion, which I guess only works when you're connected, it's powered on. I think it's a magnet that releases. I actually like the resistance, so I'm not bummed out that I can't change that here on the Razer mouse. I think that's fine. This button though, this is for the AI Prompt Master, and we'll have to go through that in Synapse directly. Okay, you got the Razer branding here, the really nice, that gunmetal gray design color, and then this is your USB-C port. It's really no problem plugging in a USB-C cable in here, but I was surprised at how far I had to push that cable in order to get it to fully go into the port. Just a small detail that I think you should pay attention to. On the bottom, we have these rubber feet. Looks kind of like a smiley face. And this is where your USB-C transmitter will go. Notice that there are 3 different Bluetooth devices you can connect this mouse to through Razer Hyperspeed, and you can do wired or wireless. So technically, you can connect this to 5 different mice, which is pretty elaborate. Down here is our lighting strip. It says 18 zones on the box, and we'll go through Synapse and take a look at the lighting. So that's the next thing we're going to do, and then we'll wrap up the video from there. So thanks for your patience so far. Let's get to options inside of Razer Synapse for the ProClick V2 vertical. So click right here, and we can take a look at different app profiles. This is some standard Razer stuff, all very good. Now the AI generated content is where it starts to get interesting. That button that I showed you earlier, you can pull up some AI prompts powered by either ChatGPT or I think it's Microsoft Copilot. We'll take a look more closely in a moment. And then you can ask it to help you with creating different statements. And then there are macros you can assign as well to that mouse button. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so before we get there, we're in the customize area. We've got our clicks. We can change these buttons. So the AI Prompt Master will fire up if you hold down that button. Now you can change it from, here we go, from launching the text master to the image master, or you can do AI chat, so you can have it bring up ChatGPT if you have it installed, or Copilot. I'm going to set it to Copilot so that we can see what's different, we change the function around. You can also do key recordings. Now we're into some classic Razer stuff. So I'm going to go back here, hit save. Oh, I got to do that again, 1 second. change it to Copilot, bang, there we go. So now if I hold down the button and let go, there it is. Copilot mode, right there. Very cool stuff. If we go into performance, we've got our sensitivity, polling rate, we got some power management options, all the standard stuff, and then there's the lighting options. Razer is the best company when it comes to peripheral lighting. A number of different settings that I'm sure you've all seen before, and you can map it to your other Razer devices. Currently, I have, let's see, my Wolverine V3 Pro. I have got my headset and my keyboard, all that could be mapped. So I got a lot of things that I could synchronize. You can adjust the brightness. Just be aware of the effect that's going to have on your battery, and off you go. So let's set it to static. Go with this cool blue color. And that's it. And I love the way this is looking. You can't see it, but it looks awesome. So that's Razer Synapse for the ProClick V2 Vertical.